All right, I think we're actually live now. How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the live stream. It is Thursday. We are going to try something new. I've never streamed before. I was talking to myself for about 8 minutes. So thank you to Guillermo for talking shit so I could get on the stream. All right, who's in the chat today? We got Guillermo. Guillermo's always around. I appreciate you being here, Guillermo. We got Get Seeds right here. My boy Bike in the chat. Keyboard Cowboy. Mark Emerson from Siberia. That's awesome, man. What time is it going on in Siberia? I could look it up, but I'm going to ask you instead. T-Bird FPV. I answered you in the chat. I appreciate you being here, man. Rick Zepeda from Las Vegas. That's pretty awesome. Cyclimbo. Hey, man, thanks for hanging out. Got James Laria, JT Laria. Go check his YouTube channel out. I'm sure he could link it in the chat. I don't actually know if he could do that, but we'll figure that out. He makes small, he's got like a TP3 with a DCase Vista. That's pretty cool, man. I think we're right around 46 grams with that. He can correct me in the chat if I'm wrong, which I might be. That's not all up weight. That's without the battery, but that is pretty darn awesome for a TP3. So with the DJI system in it. We've also got HB in the chat. We got L. Leston. Geez for waiting. I'm sorry about that again. Guillermo talking a bunch more shit. Daniel Cole. Yes, we are going live, and we're live now. All right, and I can see everybody is seeing me in the chat. Awesome. New Zealand. HB from New Zealand. Pedro from Portugal. We got Crismol from Michigan. Jack FPV from Connecticut. This is awesome, guys. You guys are all over the place. 64 grams. You're sorry. I'm thinking of baby tooth weight, not TP3 weight. 64 grams. All right. So if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, information, I'm happy to answer it. Costa Rica from Tonomoto. Eric Boff from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. That's awesome, man. Yeah, so we're going to answer some questions in the chat if you guys have any. Just get it started off a little bit. I want to tell you a little bit about my background now that I'm actually live. I am from Florida originally. Grew up in South Alabama, moved to Colorado to trim weed. And that's a fact. And that's because there's nothing going on in Florida. So I figured, why not come here? And worst case, we'll make the same amount of money as we do in Florida. So I came here, I started trimming weed after a little bit, and everything is pretty good. So I'm about 8 years in the cannabis industry. I just came out of that. I went from a trimmer, worked my way up through all kinds of different stuff in the industry. And yeah, then I basically got tired of that. Tired of babysitting, tired of running a building, tired of running a facility. I ran a 25,000 square foot, a 600 light facility, on and off for years. And yeah, it just got old. So now I do cannabis consulting, and I do FPV troubleshooting for people like you guys. So I'm happy to be here. Yeah, can you recommend some good 3-inch props for 5mm motor shafts? Selection seems limited. I agree with you. There's not a lot of good stuff for that size. Let's see, actually, what is even available in that size for you to get, because I can tell you what I would buy. How about that? Obviously, most of the 3 inches are going to be T-mount, and there's a lot of good T-mount choices. But as far as 3-inch props, you are correct. It is a different category. Would not buy those. Let's see what we got here. I could probably show you guys this if I made a scene to do that. Nope, that's okay. This is good. All right. Let's see here. What kind of build are we talking about for a 3-inch? Are we We're going for, let's see, 5mm motor shafts. I would guess you're building an Acrobrat or something. In that case, I'd probably go like Wind Dancer 3028s. They break fairly easy. They're going to bend. I guess not break. But I do like those props quite a bit. And they have the option to do T-mount or center push. Let's see. We've also got the HQ 3x3x3s. I think those are pretty reasonable props. I would also buy those props. If you've got maybe a Cinewhoop, you know, Gemfan inducted, there's definitely some different options there. But that's probably what I'd go with. Let's see. John T, yes, I am from Colorado. I'm in Denver currently, consulting and working in Denver, thinking it's too much money and will likely leave at some point to move out of, a little farther out of Colorado, if anything else. So, let's see. Tonomoto, FPV and weed, are we twins? I don't hide it, man. My name says Blunty for a reason. I am blunt, but I am also a smoker of blunts. Typically bowls, but blunts are, I'm not going to turn down a blunt, so. We got a bunch of people in the chat. Seeing where everybody else is from. That's pretty cool, man. Making some friends, maybe. Are there any motors that would work with the baby tooth props? The FPV cycle ones are out of stock. Yes, actually, the RCN Power 1202.5 is what you're going to want to go for. That is the baby tooth motor made by RCN Power. They actually make FPV cycles motors as an OEM. So hold on a minute. Let me get this up for you guys real quick. Bear with me 1 second. Thanks. All right, we're getting there. Hey, there we go. Okay. Save, close, move. All right, bingo. So now, RCM Power, yeah, 1202.5, 11,500 kV. These are, 11,500 kV. So these are basically the baby tooth motors, but they're actually available. So, I love to support FPV cycle, but if you can't get those motors and you can't wait, these are definitely the option for you. All right, back to my face. What else we got going on? All right. Tyler Widrick says, is there a smart way to transfer a Tiny Hawk Race 2 to another body? The trouble I'm having is the AIO board mounts 2 different demotions, and the motors I have are 3-hole mount. Yes, I have 14 of them. I'd like to change some things up. 14 of them, you say? Whew. Man, that's a tough one. Those Tiny Hawk boards are not friendly to work in. You know, the gyros are rotated, the board's long, the mounting's weird. Man, I'd have to think about that for a bit. If I find a frame that I know would fit, I will let you know. But I don't have a lot of good things for that. There's somebody in our Discord, in the Bardwell Discord, I should say, who was recently doing something just like this. Let me see if I can find it for you real quick. And see, because he has a bunch of Tiny Hawk boards too. It's the same idea. He is out of stuff to do with them, or out of patience with the Tiny Hawks, I guess I should say. So another thing you could do, Micro Heli. I don't know if they have one for the race. Let's find out. Micro Heli. Micro Heli makes replacement frames for the Tiny Hawk 2, and I bet that board and the motors would fit on there. They make both a ducted version and a non-ducted version. So let's see here. Let's flip back over there. All right. So you can see here we've got a ducted version, and it just kind of slaps right in there. And we've got, let's see. There we go. There's the non-ducted version. So to me, that's probably going to be your best. That's for a freestyle, but it's the same board. So I bet that's going to be a pretty good bet. $20 is not bad to try. And that does have the 3-hole mount motors. It's meant for the Tiny Hawk too, so. Yeah, hopefully that works out. I see Dramatisty in the chat. Thanks for coming out, man. There are a few options on Microheli, and I did find them. I appreciate that so much. Let's see. 1408, 3600 kV motors. Yeah, I would go, Rick, I would start with, yeah, Rick, I would definitely start with the Windancer 3028s and maybe the HQ3 3x3s, and then kind of go from there. See what you think about them, see how they feel to you, and then maybe do a little branching out from that direction. Let's see. Got, what hot air rework station do I have? I have to look at it because I'm not even sure. Oh, that's right. So it's a name I cannot say. It is the Away, something like that. Let me pull it up. Soldering station. I got it at Micro Center. We have a Micro Center here, and luckily it has all kinds of stuff there for you to pick up, and I'm lazy. So I just went to the Micro Center and bought a hot air rework and soldering station, so I didn't have to worry about it. So let's flip back over there. We can see that. So it's this guy here. Away. I don't even think that's how it's spelled on the sticker. But I've heard these are pretty good, and for $175 you get their rework station, you get some tips, you get the soldering iron, and actually the soldering iron has a bit on it that I don't have attached right now. I don't know if you could see that. I don't have a good way to zoom, but essentially the soldering iron has a integrated hot air, or a integrated what do you call it? The thing to suck all the air out. Smoke absorber. Has a smoke absorber inside of it, and it uses the hot air to blow the other way to suck and pull out of the smoke absorber that's integrated into the soldering iron. So you could solder, and while you're soldering, it's dragging the smoke out of that soldering iron as you're soldering. All right. Bumper Likens is here. How's it going, Bumper? Big D FPV, what's up, man? Big D sent me some canopies I still haven't used. That was months ago. I still plan on using them. They're in a drawer. Let's see. Guillermo's back. Welcome back, Guillermo. Jack FPV says, Amaxino 1303s. I think 1303s are great for a TP3 build. If you need an alternate for a TP3 build, the AMAX motors seem excellent. Let's see. Did you try Savage Bee? Is that safe to fly around people? I have not tried the Savage Bee. I would wait on the bind and fly. From what I've heard, the kit is a little difficult to put together. They send you the standard brushless board, which has the motor connectors on them, and then you're soldering next to the connectors to get the motors on. You're cutting connectors off and stuff. I'm not a big fan of that, and I've heard from some people who I trust that it wasn't the best build process in the world. So that being the case, I don't know that I could recommend the kit, but as soon as the Bindfly comes out, which I was assured on a comment on the Bardwell video we did, that they would have that available soon. So that's probably what I would look for. And the Savage Bee is a 1S toothpick, I believe, basically like a baby tooth from Newbie Drone with the Newbie Drone's motor quality and such. It seems like a good option. I still want to support FPV Cycle Bob Ruge, but I do think it's a cool product, and it's neat to see other people coming out with this. Happy Model's also got a Crux X out, which is like 6400 kV motors, but you run it on 2S, so it runs similar to baby tooth RPM, and that seems like a good option as well. Those are all 3-inch quads. Let's see. Mark Emerson, where's the dog? He does his own thing, but he might be back there. Maybe we'll call him at the end of the stream. You'll probably hear him at some point because he doesn't stay settled for long. Let's see. Tonomoto, what are your thoughts on the Newbie Drone Flow 2306.5 on an Arma 10 Marmot 5-inch frame? Would it be a good combination? Absolutely. Any 2306.5, like anything around that world, 2207, 2306, it's a perfect motor. Back in the day, Rotoride did a video where they reviewed 2207 versus 2306, and even Vanover got one wrong. I really don't think you're going to feel the difference. Any motor in that class that looks like a quality motor, that has quality components that you can find at a good price, I think is what you should purchase. And obviously the KV is just 4S or 6S, 24 to 2600 KV for 4S. Unless you're a crazy person, you want to do like 1600 to 1900-ish KV is like pretty high for 6S. You can go higher, but getting pretty wild. A Day at the Range. Hey, how's it going, man? Appreciate you coming out. A Day at the Range says he hacked the DJI firmware for a custom firmware and has SD card hack out of the SD card port to get HDMI out of those goggles streaming. So pretty cool. I feel like I believe him because I don't see any reason he would lie about it. And he's giving away goggles on his channel. I'm sure he would be willing to give you some if you sign up for it. I think he's like one a month, and he got like 10 sets of goggles from DJI, so that's pretty cool. Let's see. Jan Booth says, my quad pulls to the right ever so slightly when it's cold. Curious if you have any idea why that be? Gyro or maybe in the controller? Well, you can diagnose that, Jan, from a few different ways. If you've got black box log, I think the easiest way to diagnose that is to log it and then check your RC input. But when you have that drift, do you see the RC input moving? You can also check on the receiver tab and see if your RC input looks correct on the receiver tab from your transmitter. Then you can start to diagnose which is the issue. If you've got drift in the transmitter, if you've got drift when it's cold, maybe those gimbals are changing. I could see that. That's definitely a interesting angle you're going down there. I've never heard of that, but it certainly could happen. Also, if it's drift on the flight controller, it should recalibrate. Like I wouldn't expect gyro drift to cause you to pull to the right. If you're in angle mode or some kind of controlled mode like a Horizon or an Acro Trainer, maybe I guess Acro Trainer is not really as much, but the other ones are going to pull to the right if your accelerometer's off, and that can happen maybe with the cold. Maybe something's going on with your accelerometer calibrating, but that should calibrate every time you arm. So I wouldn't expect to see that problem except over maybe an extended flight with like accelerometer drift. Let's see. Guillermo says, any advice for a friend of mine? His QX7 just died, and there's not connected to a computer for firmware update. Just doesn't power on. JB, Joshua Bardwell, has a video. If you Google Bardwell, or if you search Bardwell on YouTube, you could look for Tyrannus bricked, recovering a brick Tyrannus. There's like 3 or 4 methods in that video for recovering a brick Tyrannus. One that I like, typically, if you don't get anything even when you plug it in, is to flip it open and pull out that button cell battery, and then try to push the power on the front so you're draining all the capacitors in the unit, putting the battery back in, make sure that button cell battery is good, and then trying to fire it up again. Sometimes that can fix the issues, but if not, I would check out that Bardwell video and see if he can figure anything out for you. A Day at the Range says, Blunty, why can I not super chat? That is because I am not a monetized creator. I still need a lot of hours of view time, and I am lazy and don't make videos. So hopefully this will help. Let's see. Wilbo says minimum number of subscribers. So I need 1,000 subs, and I also need 4,000 watched hours, which is actually the harder part, it seems like, because the subs are coming. The watched hours are not, which is fair. I don't put out enough content, and that's what I'm here to do today. If you guys want to see some videos from me or content that I need to cover, I don't want to step on Bardwell. I'd like to do companion content to Bardwell, or things that accentuate or things that he's missing, right? So if you guys think of something that you think would be beneficial for me to take the time and do, I'm happy to do that. I need content for videos, and a lot of times I think it's not worth the time, so let me know. Let's see. We got people answering in the chat. I appreciate you guys all helping each other in the chat. That's wonderful stuff. This community is so good about that. Mike N says, love Micro Center. Thanks for the info. Looking to pick up a rework station. I love Micro Center as well, man. The impulse buys are excellent, but also the support is pretty awesome. I have a 2080 Ti. If my 2080 Ti breaks, I can just go take it in with the small amount that I paid and get a new 2080 Ti. There's no concern, no issue. They'll give it to me the same day, and if they don't have one, they give me the next one up. So I'll get one of the new 30 series cards that's more expensive than I paid for my 2080 Ti when I got it. So pretty cool. L. Leston says there's some news from DJI discontinuing the FPV system. I've not seen that. However, what I will tell you is I scooped yesterday on the FPV news. I got a report from CADX directly. I messaged somebody at CADX that I know. And they said that the Vista shortages, and thus the other shortages for the DJI equipment, are because of Huawei. Back in September, on September 15th, the United States actually blocked Huawei from getting chips made in the United States. So China has forced, as a government, because the government owns a lot of companies there, has forced a lot of chipset manufacturers to make only Huawei equipment and prioritize Huawei chipsets. So I was told by my representative at CADX that their Vistas were not able to be produced because they ran out of chipsets, and they weren't getting chipsets in a timely fashion because Huawei is getting those chipsets made instead at those facilities. They said they have a solution for that. We should see more coming soon. Certainly to me, with that combined with the fact that we saw the leak of the DJI FPV controller from a DJI engineer that looks like a Tango 2. It's clearly an FPV controller because he's pinching. It's clearly a DJI controller because of color, location of symbols. I mean, there's so many things that point to that. It'd be a really good fake if it was a fake. We also saw Osita LV put out a leak. Osita LV is great on Instagram if you haven't seen it. Put out a leak for the DJI drone a while back, and he had two different images, one which we knew was the drone and another which he thinks might have been the drone in a test scenario. We don't have a lot more info than that, but he claims it is a racing style drone made from DJI for FPV, which, if that's the case, yet another reason for them not to be dropping the system. We also got V2 rumors. I personally heard a rumor from someone I trust who I cannot reveal, and also Skadoosh came on Joshua Bardwell's live stream and said that he talked to a DJI engineer and that they confirmed that at some point a V2 will come as well. I really don't see DJI dropping the FPV system currently, but it is possible, and if you have any news for that, please let me know. Also, it's bluntyfpv@gmail.com if you'd like to email me about anything like that. I'm happy to take it there. Let's see. Yeah, L. Liston, yeah, okay, I see now, sorry, right after that you said because they're manufacturing chips for Hawaii. I think they got that misunderstood from our live stream. It's not that, they're not discontinuing it, it's just that they are being forced currently to make those chips. But that's all chipset manufacturers for most electronics in China from what I understand. At least non-critical components like drones and those sorts of things. But yeah, they said they have a solution. So I would expect to see Vistas and many other things start coming in stock a lot more often, and that availability to come up in the next couple months, according to that contact that I have. Who knows, they could be lying, but this is a good contact, and it's pretty good information. So let's see. What else am I missing here? Just catching up with chat because I'm trying to go through all these questions here. Can 48 kilohertz PWM cause motors to desync? Because I added it to my BLE M 5-inch quad and I desynced twice. I could see that happening. 48 kilohertz essentially, right? Okay. 48 kilohertz is essentially sending twice as many signals at half the intensity, I guess, if that makes sense. So you're breaking twice as much, not breaking, not like physically breaking, but you're breaking up the signal twice as much. So you're, instead of hit blank, it's hit blank, hit blank, hit blank, hit blank, and the hits are smaller. So overall, you added the same amount. That's at least my understanding. UAV text in the chat. That's awesome, man. Thank you so much for showing up. Maybe he can actually clarify that a little better, but I think I did a pretty good job. But I could see it causing desyncs anyway, just because you have less power to push that motor around, less push for torque, is my understanding. I'm a little bit out of my depth here, but that is my understanding. I would try moving to 24 kilohertz, and if that is the only difference that shows you that you see that in, then I would maybe look at scenarios in which you're desyncing. Because overall, you should be putting less, there should be less at the top end that you're doing extra. I would think probably you're seeing that on the lower side when you're doing flips and rolls, but I'd love to hear a little more about that. So, very high lag. Okay, if there's lag, sorry about that. and I hope we can fix it. Let's see. Chrismal FPV says, I designed a 3-inch conversion frame for the Tiny Hawk off Dave C. FPV 3-inch MLR. It's on Thingiverse under Emacs Tiny Hawk 3-inch conversion. Takes the Tiny Hawk FC and motors. I built and flown it on my YouTube, so go check that out, guys. That seems pretty cool. I will have to look into that. Your Majesty says, what do you think about the Newbie Drone 20x20 new Cricket F7 stack? Didn't see it listing black box, which is kind of a bummer. So 2 things I'll say about here. I'm going to try this. Let's see if that makes any better. 2 things I'll say about that. One is, I think that's a really expensive stack. That ESC is like $80 or $90, which a Newbie Drone seems to love to do with their ESCs. Maybe it's worth that, but I feel like there's, you know, the Hobby Wing 60 amp is $50. I would probably buy that instead. Overall, if it doesn't list black box, I know that if that's not an option, sometimes on the Newbie Drone flight controller, that's an option to add black box. You can actually buy the black box chip and solder it to the bottom of the board where there's typically a black box section labeled. It's possible they don't have one on that board. Actually, let's pull it up. Why don't we look at it and see what it is? Cricket F7 stack. Back to the scene. All right. So let's look at the flight controller. How do we see the back? Cricket 200 controller, F7. I do not see, of course, same thing Bardwell does. Okay, I do not see a spot to solder a black box on here. Unfortunately, like their Infinity controller, their 300, has a spot. I'm surprised the Cricket board doesn't have black box, but there's a lot of stuff on this board. It is an F7, so yeah, does not look like there's an ability to do black box on this board. All right. Let's see. James Laria says, do you plan on trying Tracer or Ghost yourself? I will probably try Tracer. I have Tracer ordered. I am a vendor as well. I have a website, WeSellQuadParts.com. I don't like to advertise that too much because I like to keep them separate, but just to let you know. So that means I do order things from TBS as a vendor. So I'm just waiting on that restock for Tracer for vendors. When that comes through and they have the rest of the stuff, I'll be getting that Tracer kit, and I will be busting one of those Tracer kits out to test it. I'm not sure how much work I could do for the general testing. As far as range and stuff, I think a lot of people are covering that already. But maybe I can give you guys some more insight into a user's perspective. Yeah, we'll see what it looks like. Scott Abramzik. Blunty, XT60 wires out of the back or out of the side of your flight controller. Which way do you prefer? Depends on the frame, I guess my answer would be. Really just depends on the frame. I think like on my DJI Skyliner, like the Ladrib Skyliner HD, I actually have it coming out of the front, behind the camera, out of the top set. Let me see if hold on, let me grab that. So you can see, I actually have this one coming out the front of this stack. I think it's really just wherever it works the best on your setup. I think wherever the frame design's the best. The most important thing for me when I mount my XT60 or XT90 is going to be that I have the wire secured. Remember, if that battery comes loose and that XT60 is pretty tight, you're just going to rip that lead right out of the stack. And that's something you really don't want to do. So anything you could do to prevent that, I typically zip tie to 2 different standoffs if I can find them. So the direction it will let me get on 2 different standoffs, or a standoff at the top of the frame where like the frame's cut with an indentation. I like to zip tie on there as well. I think that's a positive thing to do. UAV Tech in the chat, Bunny for the win. I really appreciate you being here, man. Thank you so much for the support. UAV Tech, if you don't know who UAV Tech is, I don't know who you are or what you're doing, but maybe you're new. UAV Tech has excellent content. He's got a website, theuavtech.com. He has a tuning service. He has tuning presets. If you need tuning information, that's the guy. He has 2 packs a day without black box, 2 packs a day with black box, in depth. I mean, it's just like everything. So if you need it, he's got it. If you don't need it, he can tell you. He's the tuning guy. A day at the range. Thanks for the plug. Cool to hear about your work outside of quads. I'm in a very similar trade. Had a bad case of root rot. Took out 100 mothers. Root rot. Yes. So that is... We could talk about cannabis anytime you guys want. I'm always happy to do... Oh, look who's joined us. This is Henry. Say hi, Henry. Hi. Henry's a rescue dog. But yeah, so, sorry. Where were we? Case of root rot. So, yeah, root rot, obviously you probably know this. Typically root rot is like oxygen deprived roots. You've got too much water in the roots. And you've got some kind of disease in the roots because of that. So they're sitting stagnant and there's no oxygen to fight away the bad stuff. So like a overwater typically, or like a bad uptake, or just too wet in general. It's typically the reason. You want a wet pot, but too wet means root rot, and nobody likes root rot. So, content idea: micros and whoops. JV doesn't cover them enough. I agree. Ciotti FPV. If you guys are interested in somebody who covers micros and whoops, is Ciotti FPV. But I do agree there's a gap there, and that is something I am looking at. Yeah, for the future. James Larry, a Cryzen GTX 970. Definitely understand that one, man. I was on FX 5200, something like that, for a really long, like way longer than I should have been. And ever since then, I've never been off of a nicer card. So I got a 1070 Ti with this computer when I got it, and upgraded to a 2080 Ti as soon as I could. Cameron Smith says, wish the closest Micro Center wasn't 3 hours away. I think that is the worst thing about Micro Center, is the inavailability and ability to find a Micro Center. A lot of people do not live anywhere in range of one, and they have amazing prices, amazing deals. I bought a pre-built computer from Micro Center. It's the first, I've never done this in my life. I built a pre-built computer because it was cheaper, because it was on sale, open box. It was cheaper than the components that went in it by $200. I spent about $1,200. You got $1,400 in components. You really gotta consider it. That's for sure. Has anyone else seen the Sony drone? It's supposed to be like the Mavic style. I have not seen a drone Ninja Monkey FPV. I'd love to see that. If you have a link or some way to get that to me, if you could maybe shoot me an email at itsbluntyfpv@gmail.com with that information if you actually have a drone. Me and Bartle talked on the news about Sony getting into the drone industry. It seemed pretty cool. You know, it sounds like they're going to partner for commercial work, but even then, anything moving forward the FPV style, that cinematography, would be pretty cool, and hopefully they get into that world. Also, somebody made this concept for the Sony goggles that obviously isn't real, but it looks like some futuristic goggles, and that's something I could see Sony doing, is something similar to that. So, oh boy, Ninja Monkey FPV says, I'm having trouble updating my QX7S ACCST. So if I get OpenTX 2.2.4 on my bootloader, just no firmware. So you should just have to now flash the internal, though I would go ahead and go to the newest OpenTX. I think we're on 239, 2310. Hopefully 2.4 will be coming out soon, but that's where we're at right now. So let's see. UAV Tech says I'm right on the 24 risk 48K. Awesome. Maybe set DMAG to high. Yeah, so let's talk real quick. If you want to fix some desyncs, I think typically the advice from people like UAV Tech and Ryan Hale from Mini Quad Test Bench is you're moving back to 24 kilohertz PWM. You're going to go DMAG to high. You're going to go timing to 23 because you don't want the CPU on the ESC to be doing the work for the auto. And then if none of that makes any difference, you can also reduce startup power or ramp up power. I believe Ryan Hale said 0.35 to 0.3 is pretty safe. But as you go down and ramp up power, there is a point where you're going to lose performance in the quad. So we're just doing things to try to help out in those desync situations on the ESC. Let's see. Sony has amazing cameras and video. It only seems natural to me that some performance is into a drone. I 100% agree. Sony seems like they're definitely going to jump in the drone industry. I mean, putting out that statement for them means they're going to make a hard effort, I would say. It's not just a, hey, we're going to see something show up from Sony. I think we're going to see them try to push into that cinema industry. And right now, who's in the cinema industry as far as drones go? You've got like Alta X, and you've got like just like small manufacturers and stuff, you know? So pretty interesting. Let's see. I watched Skadoosh all the... Rick Zabeta says I watch Skadoosh all the time on his channel. He definitely would know about DJI being over there close. Did you see those extended antennas he had made for his air unit on his new one? I did not. I'll have to check that out on Skadoosh's channel. Explosive Fruit says, hey, should I run an original 65mm kebab toothpick on Betaflight 3.5.7? There's two schools of thought here. One of them is, I think, if you want to be current, if you want to understand what's going on currently, if you're okay doing a small tiny bit of work, which really isn't that much work, I would just flash to 4.2 and tune it properly. Also, 65mm kebab toothpick, I'm not sure what that is, but I think you mean 3-inch toothpick. If you mean 65mm, either way. 357 with Kebab's presets on Kebab's tune on Kebab's FC will typically be pretty similar to Kebab's flight characteristics. However, you have to consider, right? You have things like air density. I mean, even altitude is going to be different. If you're not at the same altitude as Kebab, if you're not, if the batteries aren't performing the same way, if you have different sag, I mean, there's so many different factors. The motors can have variance. That my personal opinion would be flash 4.2, follow a UAV tech guide or somebody, or just fly on defaults, adjust your filters accordingly, and just give it a shot and see where you're at. You can always go back. You can always dump the CLI you get on the board. Make sure you're flashing the correct target with a name or whatever in the header of the CLI. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of staying on old firmware for the sake of staying on old firmware because it works. I think at some point that makes sense, but I think also there are features that have been added since 3.5.7 that are beneficial for some quads. And I think it seems silly to me to forego things like RPM filtering because we like the defaults or the ease of use of 3.5.7. Get Seeds right here. Bike says, what kind of weed is chat smoking right now? I have Beazle currently on the table for after the stream. Let's see. Got all kinds of strains in the chat. We got Gelato. We got Wedding Cake and San Fernando Valley Kush. Mimosa. Good stuff. Let's see. HB says yes, you could definitely take up some space making micro content. So that's, yeah, definitely think I'm going to start doing that. Let's see. Guillermo says, do you think Tracer on old Futaba is possible? I think it maybe depends on how old Futaba is. If you're not running OpenTX, here's the question. Can the old Futaba run Crossfire? If the answer is yes, then you could likely run Tracer as well. That seems to be the case. UAV Tech says, looks like DJI will be releasing more firmware updates. That's interesting. I had not heard that, but if that's the case, that's super exciting because I would love to see this SD card slow error. So for some of you who may not know, there's a current error with the DJI Air unit, obviously not the Vista because the Vista doesn't have onboard recording, but the DJI Air unit currently for most users, there's some users that claim not to have this issue, but every user I've talked to for any length of time who I know has flown the system has had a slow SD error after 2 to 5 flights of the system. Some people claim reset on the system makes sense, but I think a lot of this is anecdotal. It does seem that a lot of the issue is stemming from the Air unit and from the system. And that can be sort of confirmed. We had somebody in our Discord message DJI support, and DJI support said this was a known issue with the CPU, and I believe they had changed something since 1.04. So 1.04, version 1.04 is something you could go back to if you needed to, and 1.04 will let you record without that SD card slow error, but you lose some of the feature upgrades from 05 and 06, namely like 50 megabit per second and some of the analog improvements, I believe. Ali FPV says there's a gap on KISS content if you're interested. I have a FetTech FC and FetTech 45 amp ESC that I still need to build. My opinion on FetTech so far, and KISS in general, has been that it seems like if you know what you're doing, there's not a lot of reason to use KISS versus another software because you can configure another software just like KISS and you're not locked in like you are to KISS. Betaflight's an open source software. I can see what's going on. I know what I'm running, why I'm running it, how it's running. I could even change it if I knew enough coding to do it. Whereas that's not something I could say for KISS. I am going to be giving the FedTech stack a shot. I was going to sell it, but I will be building that quad, and I will let you guys know. You know, there's just these weird rules, right? FedTech, for instance, the flight controller, you can only power the receiver off the flight controller. If you try to power something like a VTX, you'd fry the flight controller no matter what the VTX is. For some reason, that BEC can't handle it. You know, there's just these little rules. So you got to make sure you're supposed to hard mount FedTech, I believe, instead of soft mount, because soft mount could actually cause issues. You know, they'll call their ESCs 128 kilohertz PWM, but what does that mean, and when does that come into play? Is that a variable PWM? Are there other tricks they're using to get that PWM? There's a lot of questions I have about KISS, so it's definitely a path I'll be going down, but I'm not sure how much content I will dedicate to that. Let's see. Jeff Hendricks says, where's the info on DJI updates? I would love to know that, UAV Tech, if you know the answer to that question. Let's see. Cause FPV says, I've got a slim form factor PC. All right, let's see. James Laria, 3-inch micros are my bread and butter. I'm happy to provide you with naked Vista builds to give a try here and there. We definitely need more micro content. That would be awesome, man. I'm super into that. UAV Tech says, and ramp up power to 12%. Interesting. I was under the impression, Ryan Hammer made it sound like ramp up power of 12% would start causing issues with flight performance. So I am super interested to know about that. Keith Throne says more KISS content. I'll take that into account, man. If people want it, I'm happy to provide it. I know Bardwell doesn't really cover it, so I'm happy to do something like that. What's the furthest someone has actually gone on DJI? Cause FPV asks. My understanding is the hard limit on DJI is 8.2 miles, which is like 13 kilometers, somewhere in that world, is when it hard drops out. And it does that by somehow detecting the distance of the packet, like the timeout. So the packets time out when they hit the goggles and you start to lose bitrate quite quickly. That being said, we have a day at the range here in the chat. He might be still here. Now, a day at the range says that he hacked a custom firmware, and with that, he was able to remove that range limit. So it doesn't appear that's a hardware range limit from the protocol. It's a software range limit in DJI. So they did double that on the 50 megabit per second update, but I've been told only 50 can go 8.2, 25 still goes 4.1 or 4 miles. I'm not 100% sure on that one because I don't have a lot of situations to range test, but so definitely something to look into. For BLHeli32, Cyclibo says, for BLHeli32, how many degrees advanced equates to high from BLHeli S motor timing? Might help with these 4006 motors on the 13-inch. So here, I'll pull that up for you just to show you how I would find that out. But there is a manual for BLHeli S that I reference quite often, and it actually tells us that information. So let's pull that up right here. And we can actually see if we look for medium. Okay, let's try actually medium. Here we go. It's commutation time. So low is 0, medium low is 7.5, etc. So high would be 30 degrees. And typically for, you know, now here's what I'll say. So I'm not sure if longer or shorter timing is better for these things. I just know that the recommendation from Ryan Harrell was on 5-inch quads or the typical quad. A 23 timing would be okay because 23 is a standard timing that works pretty well and it takes off the CPU work from, it takes off the CPU work basically from the ESC. So if you're not getting that benefit, it's possible that that won't be, you know, a benefit to you, but that's my understanding anyway. So, all right, let's see. MB Edit says, I just picked up some smoke now. Listen to It's Blunty and maybe a little soldering. That sounds good to me, man. The original kebab day in Richmond, 65mm props. So I am somewhat of a FPV baby. I'm only about 11 months into this. On the 25th would be 11 months for me. I started on Christmas last year. So I was actually not around for the original kebab Build. So 65 millimeter props is interesting. I would still say, you know, as Explosive Fruit says right under that, okay, I see. No, I mean the original 65 millimeter toothpick, originally you'd be fine the TP3 and Baby Tooth. But 414 is really good on it. I just find it difficult to tune it. RPM filtering is a blessing on the toothpick. Definitely agree with that. I think if you have issues tuning it, maybe check out the toothpick set from UAV Tech. He has a good two-pack toothpick tuning tutorial. Well, that's a good two-pack toothpick tuning tutorial. Should have been the name of that video. Yeah. James Larry says slap Emu Flight on that thing and send it. That's not a bad idea. If there's a target for that board, it might be worth a shot. Cause FPV says Diesel's always a good choice. Yeah, I am. Keith Run says Sour Kim. Adaytharian says Gorilla Glue. Glass Pound says Orange Cookies. I think everybody in here has got some weed going on, and nothing wrong with that. Guillermo says that's PPM out, I think. I think it has PPM by the trainer port. So I think you can put PPM out of the Crossfire module, but I do not think you can put PPM... Oh, man. Sorry, I'm not the guy to ask for that question. If you go... Guillermo, if you go on the TBS Lounge on Facebook, I think that's a really great resource. If you post that question there and you tag Raphael Perker and Wayne Ho on that, that is Trappy and Wayne, and they will help you out with that question for sure. Mark Lila says, great to see you streaming. I appreciate you being here, man. Thank you so much. Let's see. Shiny Video Stuff says, Tracer can confirm that old Deviation TX builds with Crossfire support work fine with Tracer. Crossfire engine dynamically fetches menu contents from the module to display on the radio screen. So it sounds like, yeah, as long as you have Crossfire support, you'll be okay. But not 100% sure there. Zeus of Crete says, I repaired a ribbon cable on my T16. It went into emergency mode. I reflashed the latest firmware and SD contents. Now multi-module doesn't work and can't set up home screen widgets now. Any advice? Unfortunately, I would probably start again at the beginning. The ribbon cable you repaired, was that one to a switch or was that one to somewhere in the board? If that was somewhere in the board, it's very possible that repair did not go properly. Let's see. Bill Grimes tells Guillermo to check out Drone Mesh. I 100% agree. Drone Mesh is a great resource. He has great videos. He's definitely someone to check out. He does great testing. He did some testing on the Diatone ESC. Helped me decide to buy it. It's a very clean ESC without a capacitor on it. Rather, you don't have to add a capacitor. That's what I mean. Yeah, Archangel says, get the replacement cable kit from Jumper. I've seen Joshua, then follow Joshua's vid on recovering bricked radio. Yeah, I think that's probably a good plan. It just depends on where those cables went. If they went to switches, I still wouldn't expect a switch to break the communication of the radio or mess anything with the firmware. But if it is one of the internal cables, I could certainly see that being an issue. Let's see. Kiss for the win. Jack FPV says, kiss all for the win. All that doesn't matter. It flies amazing. Set it and forget it. Kisses for pilots. Interesting. Again, I'm going to give it a shot, so we'll find out. Electronut says, what up, Blunty, a.k.a. the neighborhood Spider-Man. I cannot say I understand that one. But I'll take it. T-Bird FPV. Can I take Gator clips and hook up battery to Vista to update firmware and register before I put it in quad? Do I need to be hooked up to FC? You do not need to be hooked up to FC. You can definitely hook it up to battery power. Just the only thing about the Vista is just make sure you got a fan on it. It is going to warm up on the bench, and it can possibly, let's see. Yeah, and it can possibly overheat on the bench for sure, and it'll stop the update. You'll just have to restart it. But it's much easier to just put a fan on it. I blow on mine. You get a little lightheaded if you keep doing it, but I make it through. So, yeah, who just want to fly? Pilots who just want to fly, Jack. Yeah, I totally understand. That's what I've heard from a lot of people. Also, though, like I know guys who fly KISS, and they also tell me about these little tuning problems they can't clean up. So it definitely makes me interested in flying it for myself. UAV Tech says I dropped the link, but maybe it was blocked. Interesting. Okay, hold on. Let me mod UAV Tech. There's zero reason for him not to be a moderator. So that's taken care of. So you can drop that link now if you want. Mr. UAV Tech. A Day at the Range says it's just software. Basically, just tell the goggles to ignore the ping time, but not the problem. It's once you pass the range limit, about a half mile later, it overheats and drops link. Interesting. Okay, that's good to know. Day at the Range talking about DJI FPV. Jack FPV's got Romulan. That's pretty sweet. Obese Claw's got cartridge here at work. Definitely. Guillermo says, I'm sure Trappy knows me very well. That's funny. Hey, man. Gotta do what you gotta do. Let's see. This crate says the switches. Yeah, man. Like, for me, if it was the switches, then you could just unhook the ribbon cable for that switch, and then it would be the same as before. So I can't imagine that replacing ribbon cables would make a difference here. Yeah, man. I'm going to say, unfortunately, it sounds like a flash went bad. Are you sure that you flashed the right target? Sometimes OpenTX can be a little weird about what you're flashing, so maybe just double check on that guy. Dax Neal says, hey, Blunty, what's a good way to begin to learn how to read black box logs? There's a couple different things I'd say there. One, I'm not great at reading black box logs. I'm okay at it. I can sort of get my way around, and I sort of know what I'm looking for, but gyro signals still confuse me. I'm not necessarily sure exactly what I should be looking for. And there's also tools like PID Toolbox that I'm not super big fan. Like, I don't really know that much about, I would say. UAV Tech links his page, uavtech.com/blackbox. I 100% agree. He's got good resources, and he's probably the guy. I mean, he's the guy I go to when I'm trying to learn it. So he's probably where you should go to. Just don't let it be that daunting to you. Start thinking about what's actually happening on the screen, right? Don't look at it as like, hey, there's a bunch of garbage here and I don't really understand what's going on. Just take it piece by piece. Use those presets that UAV Tech has. That's super important for Black Box Explorer, so you can actually see what's going on. And then, just slowly work your way through it. The other thing I would say is there's a tuning group on Facebook, a Black Box tuning group. And if you go on there and you watch these guys help other people tune, I think that's another good way. Because you can see what they're seeing in the logs. You can download the same logs. You can look at the same information. You can see their screenshots and get a good idea of why they're making the decisions they're making. And it can help give you some insight into the process as well. Vic and Air FPV says, sup, it's Blunty. What's your go-to 3D printing service? I actually, if I need anything 3D printed, I either get somebody on the Discord to print it for me, or on Bardwell's Discord. Bardwell has a private Discord for patrons. Or I get it printed at my local FPV shop. Hopefully you have one near you. But it's really awesome. Super handy. And essentially, I could just send them any file. They can print it for me and go pick it up with my parts. I can go there on race day, those sorts of things, and get whatever I need done. So they could test it for me there. They print a new one. We can modify it, those sorts of things. So it seems like a good way to do it for me. So if I know what I want, I'll order it from somewhere, or I'll get it from somebody on Discord. If not, then I'll just go pick it up from the store, from the local place, UAV Tech says, EmuFlight is rebasing on 4.2 anyway, so the more that is different, the more that it's the same. Yeah, that's interesting. I had not heard that. I know that was one thing people talk about a lot, is EmuFlight being basically 357 at the core, I think. So, Dan Richmond says, these are great if you didn't flash the firmware that's multi-enabled, but you did check the multi-box. Okay. Let's see. UAV Tech, yep. I have a Black Box 101 video on the website and trace templates you can download that goes along. Yeah, 100%. Go there and check that out. Archangel says, what build do you have planned over the next or over the holidays? I actually just threw together a Source 1 build with a Vista because I broke my glide. But I am trying to build a FetTech build next. I'm not sure what frame I'm going to put it on. Maybe like a Source 1 or something cheap. It really just depends. I gotta say, like, I love Bob. I love FPV Cycle, but I barely touched my glide on the ground after a small power loop, and I broke an arm very quickly. It was about 8 packs into that frame. So I don't think I'm going to go light frames anymore. I think I'm going to go medium to medium heavy style frame. So yeah, I'm not sure yet. If you guys have a frame recommendations for my next build, I definitely am interested. I'm leaning Source 1 right now, just because it's easy and it's pretty cheap. So. Let's see. Fluoxetine says, I wish to build custom OpenTX transmitter. Will TX16's huge touchscreen be the best bang for the buck? Custom transmitter. That's pretty much out of my element, I gotta be honest with you. Interesting. That's probably a pretty good screen, man. If you think about screens in the industry, the TX16S, the question is how much do you really need to spend on the screen, and what's the difference between that screen and one that's much cheaper? I don't know prices on those or wholesale prices on those, so I think that's got to be your consideration. If you're talking like, adding $20 or $30 for a touchscreen and a bigger screen, I think you're in a world where most people aren't going to be interested in. But the TX16S isn't that expensive, so I can't imagine a wholesale those are that expensive of a screen. Electronaut says, what's the primary difference between EmuFlight and Betaflight? As far as I know, EmuFlight has worked to do whoop stuff, so they've got like, what's it called? NFE racer mode, NFE angle. So basically the pitch is not on an angle mode, but the roll is. So you can pitch forward and go really fast, but your roll is on an angle, so you're leveled. And they've got a couple different things in there to do with whoop tuning and whoop forms and stuff. I think it's kind of preference at this point. I know people fly it on 5-inch and 7-inch as well. But essentially, from my understanding, it's just a 3.7 framework, Betaflight 3.57. With some different tweaks and just a different branch that they've done. They've decided to make some different decisions. They have the IMU-F filter, which I'm not sure, but I think is just some sort of Kalman filter. They don't have RPM filtering, which I'm not, I'd love to see RPM filtering, which maybe that rebase will bring RPM filter. So yeah. Zach Carazales says, what's up, Blunty? How's it going, man? Thanks for coming by. Let's see. Main concern 0309 Jasonify says, main concern on use of GPS rescue mode. If we're talking Betaflight, main concern is GPS rescuing too close to yourself. If you flip that switch or you trigger it somehow within 100 feet and you don't have it changed, 100 meters actually, and you don't have it changed in the CLI or in the advanced expert settings in Betaflight, you will drop out of the sky without going into GPS rescue mode. Bardwell just did a good video on GPS rescue mode as well. I would definitely check that out. Guillermo says, favorite brushless whoop. Right now, Hummingbird F4 Pro or B-Brain brushless. Both of those are good. The F4 Pro had a big issue with receiver failsafing, and the receiver is just not binding anymore after crashes. However, they have replaced those boards with the V2, have said that problem is fixed, and they're flash selling the V1 boards pretty cheap. I think they're like $20. So let's see. Vicanair says, I'll look into a local FPV shop. Smoking some Obama Runts and Topanga Grape. That's awesome, man. Let's see. James Larry said, Bob just redid all the glide arms. Okay, that's good to know. Camel Smith says, love my glide hammer. Yeah, I'm considering buying glide hammer arms and putting them on the glide frame if I do replace those arms. Let's see. Yeah, Tiago Ramos also says you can go glide hammer. Pedro Tome says cricket frame. I definitely was looking at that. Council Sheemworks Bang God. Man, I would really like to build Bang God. That is on my list of things to build. Keith Throne says BQE. BQE seems interesting. Yeah, Pedro says, but it's expensive. Yeah, that cricket frame is definitely expensive. There's a lot of expensive frames, but Source 1 seems pretty solid for the price. That's why I like it. UAV Tech says, if you're looking for OpenTX 2.4 early, you can get it from the link. He's posted there in chat. Has Ghost, Crossfire Shot, and Express LRS support. It's pretty cool. I think also would have touchscreen support. I don't know if that's in yet. Let's see. Philoxetine says, I plan to make a Nintendo Switch-style transmitter using Tango 2 Pro gimbals and a TX16S touchscreen. Just for your feedback, I think that's pretty awesome, man. I think anything like that's awesome. You're going to learn a ton by doing that project, and you're going to get something hopefully that you like to use. I think something to consider is just the fact that TBS is likely coming out with a full-size controller called the Mambo, which hopefully will be similar to that almost exactly with the TBS 2 Pro Tango 2 Pro gimbals, hopefully, and a touchscreen. We'll see what TBS actually comes out with. But that has been shown in a pull request on OpenTX. Brandon's Baked Beans now says Betaflight has NFE mode now too. I did not know that. I wish it could be set to a mode. It has to be on a profile right now. I see. Disarm, change profile, fly race mode. I don't know if Emu handles that switch better. I don't think it does. I don't think you can put race mode on a switch, but I could be wrong. It's been a few months since I've run Emu Flight. Toxic FPV says the Source 1 takes a freaking beating and keeps on chugging. It looks like a beefy frame, man. It looks like you're forgoing weight to have a little more beef. It's something I'm definitely considering. UAV Tech says other optimization on OpenTX 2.4 as well. Express ELRS guys have optimized a good mashup of all the good stuff coming in OpenTX 2.4. Bill Grimes says Team Motor Pacer F7 switched to multi-shot. Now I can't connect and processors get very hot. I saw you post this before. This is really interesting to me. I've never heard of this issue. Has anybody in chat ever heard of this issue? For some reason, on a Team Motor Pacer F7, he has changed to multi-shot, and he can no longer connect to the drone on the USB, and his processors get hot when he boots up the flight controller. Bill Grimes, have you tried to put it into DFU mode and tried to reflash it? If you can't connect normally, you might be able to connect by holding the boot button when you power up the flight controller with a battery. And then plug it into USB and run something like, what's it called? Impulse RC Driver Fixer. That's probably somewhere I would go with that. Zach Raleigh says, try the 75mm frame. I love that frame. My favorite that I have designed. That's awesome, man. I'll definitely have to try to do that. I need to get one of those. Rick Cepeda says, I've never had any luck with EmuFlight. I have a couple of whoops that I race set up in Betaflight with Project Mockingbird, and they fly awesome. I agree. The one thing I'll say about Mockingbird is I tend to like my tunes a little lighter on the PIDs. When I tune my quads, I'm not going anywhere near as high as Mockingbird does on the PIDs. He's cranking his PIDs up to the moon, which is fine. It's a feel. That's definitely a feel you can go for on that whoop. But I'm trying to more go for like set point to gyro sort of deal, like a standard tune, and then just use the feel of the quad through rates. But the Mockingbird tune is really good too. I think a lot of people fly it for a reason, because it definitely helps you feel locked in. Also, I'll say that I ran EmuFlight on a Tiny Hawk 2 and really liked it. It was excellent tune, much better than Betaflight for me on the Tiny Hawk 2 at the time that I was racing. I felt like I got extra seconds on the course from EmuFlight. So, FPV Drew says this is where everybody's at. Totally, man. We're all here. Thanks for coming. I appreciate it. FP Drew has got some excellent videos. If you go check out his channel, I am going to add some folks as moderators here that I trust as people. All right. If you guys want to, FP Drew, if you want to post a link to your channel, you're welcome to do that. Tiago Ramos says, I'm with NSA doing surveillance of an Argentinian guy. Hope he doesn't notice I follow him everywhere. Good stuff. If you want a super solid but heavy frame, hyper low frames are beastly. Interesting. That's hyper low, I assume, not hyper light. Is that different? Hyper light's a pyrodrone frame, I think, right? Let's see. Cause FPV. I'm thinking about the Express RS stuff. I've got all R9 stuff, and I really like it. But the refresh rate of the Express RS is tempting to me. I've never had a problem with my R9 reliability, so I'm hesitant. I will say that they're doing a lot of work over there, man. And you can always go back now. I believe all the flashes can go back. If you're down to compile it, It definitely seems like a good move, and I believe there's a version of it that doesn't need to be compiled pretty soon. Coming out. Rick Spada says BQE makes some great frames. I have a 2-inch pickpocket that flies awesome. Check that out. Guillermo, did you see my video on the TVS Mambo? I did not, Guillermo. I will have to check that out. I'll put that on my list of things to see. Dan Richmond says it calls FPV. Same here. I've never fail-safed my R9, so I don't want to jinx it. But someday I will do it for sure. Yeah, for some people R9 works great. I think it's a decent link. I think a lot of people upgrade from R9 and realize what they were missing, but that's fine. If it's working for you and you can fly fine, I think most users aren't going to notice a difference as long as you're not fail-safe. So. Zach Corrales says multi-shot Carazales. I'm going to get that right. So multi-shot can cause issues on hobby wing stacks as well. Interesting. Your Majesty says, Floxtine, if you make it modular, there's a lot of wheelchair or people with movement issues that would love to be able to have a controller that lets the hands rest knee length apart. That's a great point. I think there's not a lot, Henry. I think there's not a lot of controllers for people with disabilities at all. I think that's a great point. Let's see. T-Bird FPV says the problem with hammer is you break bottom plate versus arms. I think that's true. I would just hope it's more sturdy than the arm held up for me. I really do not do much. Maybe the next live stream I'll have that video prepared so I could show you guys. Really, though, I barely hit that thing. So, Bill Grimes says, will not work DFU button. Yeah, I mean, if you're not seeing a change in those lights with the DFU button when you plug a battery in, I can't imagine you're able to get it back. I'm not sure why that's the case. I would think that if you're holding boot, the processor should go into boot mode instead of into Betaflight to see multi-shot. But I'm not 100% sure how that exact chain works. What's up with the T-Motor single-sided FC? Have you seen it? I have not. 0309 Jasonify. I believe that's probably so you can mount it flat on carbon, but I don't really know why you'd want to do that. It seems interesting. Cause FPV says Dan Richmond, yeah, especially since Bardwell keeps trashing the protocol. I mean, to be fair, R9 has a heartbeat, so R9 doesn't do great ROC input. It's stair steps versus other things. You want to run averaging at a 4 as opposed to like a 2 or something with an R9 because of the way the RC input comes in. But again, I don't think most users are going to notice that difference. So, let's see. Yeah, Cause FPV says, I've had unresponsive or hot FPV FCs before when they've gone bad or I shorted something before. If all you did was change to multi-shot, though, I just can't imagine that would be the case. If you remap something when you did that, it's possible that some of the pin mapping maybe did that. Again, I still think DFU mode should override that and skip all that jazz. So, UAV Tech says, yeah, the Source 1 is solid. Seen lots of logs from 5 to 7 inch. Performance is great. Price is better. Yeah, 100%, man. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I'm definitely thinking about leaning that direction for sure. Let's see. Dan Richmond says, I have air mode on a switch for whoops. So if I'm going to be bumping into stuff, I keep air mode off. 100%. That makes sense. I think I typically run air mode on my whoops. But I kind of get used to the fact that I'm going to have to disarm and hit the ground if I run into stuff. I'm pretty used to doing that anyway. I think a lot of times when you're hitting things with a whoop, you're going to get that accelerometer off. It's going to keep going off. And you're going to have to stop and land and reset it anyway. So for me, I typically run air mode just because I like the feel of it a little better. But to each their own. I think if you find it's better for you because it doesn't jump around everywhere, that's great. But what I would say is if you bump into stuff and air mode is causing you to jump everywhere, it's probably not air mode, it's probably the tune. I know things like D-min off should definitely happen on a whoop. And I've noticed that on my whoops, as soon as I turn D-min off, it's a lot less wobbly. I have to fight the wobbles a lot less. So let's see. Floxtine says, at Your Majesty, detachable gimbals is exactly the plan, because I also wish to use them for smartphone simulators. Very interesting. let me know about that, Fluoxetine. Shoot me a email at itsbluntyfpv@gmail.com. With any of that information, I'll be happy to share it. Let's see. UAV, Cause FPV says, after trying the CL1, Sting EV2, and Source 1s, I decided to fleet out my 5 inches with Source 1s. Definitely stronger and lighter than the other ones I tried. Hey man, that's fair. UAV Tech can be considered a frame resonance chart, like the top 10 frames that have a good noise profile. That's an interesting idea. It looks like UAV Tech says the same. I think that's a pretty cool concept. Vicanair says I use a Mac and have to use a hex fiend, a third-party software to convert Jazz Maverick raw hex from GitHub to an actual hex file. I cannot say I know anything about that. Sorry. Wow. Never heard of that before. I know I basically use a downloader in Firefox for GitHub. It's just a lot easier to get things from GitHub instead of doing a download, like a pull. Yeah, so. Toxic FPV, I've been flying my Source 1 for about 2 months. That's what I learned to fly on, and I've slammed into a ton of trees, wide open throttle. The only thing is a little chip at the end of one arm. Cause FPV says, what's your pupper's name? It's Jointy. It's Henry, actually. Hey, Henry. He's a good boy. He likes to play with toys. He's a rescue dog. I'll tell you a little bit about Henry. I got Henry when he was 5.5, about a year and 3 months ago. He was abused his entire life, on and off. His family wasn't around. He was beaten by a nanny and a child, from what I understand. It's really horrible what people will do to animals. But I was able to bring Henry into my life before he was put down. And yeah, so he's dealing with a lot of anxiety issues. When I got Henry, he was on Prozac, and he was on Trazodone. And so I now took him off both of those. We weaned him off. I know about SSRIs and toxicity and such. We did wean him off of those products, and yeah, he's doing a lot better. Before, he wasn't a real dog. He was kind of sedate, and he didn't do anything. And now you can see, you know, he still doesn't have his medicine. He's supposed to be horribly anxious, but he's sleeping while I'm talking. You know, he learns to be in his environment, and he learns to be happy. You know, I still can't take him on walks even. He'll pull me to the ground and rip me away if I do that, unfortunately. But, you know, we're getting there. You know, he wants to be in the house because that's where he's safe. And every bit of progress we make is good. I think for a year and 3 months, we're doing very well. So, yeah, I'm happy he's here for you guys. And I'm happy he's here for me, too. So. All right, what else we got here? Let's see. Zach Crowley says, I just want someone to explain to the masses that a stiffer frame is an easier to tune frame. That's an interesting concept. I guess that makes sense because it can vibrate less. Well, your vibrations go into other things or put work on the motors, but that's fine, I guess, because that's what you want, right? Let's see. Cause of V says, if I do Mr. Steel style, super tight, fast, reactive flying, is R9 holding me back? Been flying for a couple years now. Honestly, yes. If you want the answer to that question, the answer is yes. If you think that you fly like Mr. Steel and you do flippy floppies and you need the absolute tightest latency possible, R9 is not giving you that. So it has a heartbeat signal that like changes when it goes, so the frames are inconsistent. I believe it changes at a distance, but it's still also bad at close range. UAV Tech has yet another video where he covered that, I believe in a DJI video. Yeah, I think if you're trying to be Mr. Steel and you really think you're up in that echelon, you should not be flying R9. You should go to something faster. Express LRS, for instance, seems to be that for sure. So. Velociraptor foil, Source 1 does come with 4mm arms, had some 5mm cut for me after I broke an arm after the second battery. No issues since. Interesting. 4mm arm is, I think, about the same size. It's a 4, I think a 4 or a 5 that's on the glide that I had that I broke with no problem, but also the arms are thinner on the glide. So. Let's see. Vic and Air says, maybe I should try another browser. Yeah, worth a shot. Just see if you could get that hex file differently or something. Yeah, again, I'm not familiar with the process on Mac, so. Speedy Turtle says, what's up? Thanks, man. Thanks for showing up. Appreciate you being here. Cause FPV says, thanks for saving him. I am happy to save him. So. Let's see. Yeah, Guillermo says, Henry was looking at you talking to the screen like, what's its master doing? Yeah, he's quite inquisitive often when I'm talking to the screen, but he's pretty used to it. I talk to people on Discord and stuff quite a bit, so. Hell yeah, dogs are the best. I do agree. Never been a cat person, but I'm not opposed to it. I just always had dogs. Two-Stroke Pirate says, do you think audience mode will be available in 50 megabit per second? As far as I know, there's not a reason why it wouldn't be, though I imagine it's possibly just with... So if you've ever seen spectator mode in 25 megabit per second, it can be really bad. I have a video on my channel about that, just showing an example of a really horrible situation. Here, let me actually pull it up, just so you guys can see that. It is pretty bad. Let's see here. Hopefully this will play somewhat smoothly through the live stream. But just so you can get a quick example of what we're talking about here. Yeah, so this is the worst spectator I've ever seen. I know it can be bad sometimes, but I've definitely never seen it like this. It appears to be based on... it appears to be based on something with the way the image is processed, because we're getting the images in weird spots. So yeah, something to know. Like, my understanding is because this is so bad, right, that we will never get a 50, because it's just not feasible. I believe that one is so bad because the DJI goggles are constantly retransmitting packets, and we're getting bad retransmit packets back into the spectator goggles because they're dumping a UDP, and the goggles don't know the difference between a good and bad packet. So they're just grabbing all the packets, and they're showing what they get. I'm not sure, but that's the running theory that I've seen. Let's see. Brandon's Big Bean says, I'm smoking weed right now, and I noticed the wall behind you is changing colors. Yeah, I need to lock the exposure, probably. Let's do that. And that is done. Okay. And then hopefully that won't happen anymore. Velociraptor Foil. You can't take super chats? What if we wanted to tip you? Yeah, unfortunately, man, I cannot take super chats. I need 4,000 hours, and that's part of what we're doing today to get me up there. Because I also can't monetize on my channel. But what I can do is do Patreon right now. And for as little as $3 a month, you could support me on Patreon. So I'll post that link in the chat if anybody's interested. If not, I totally understand. No pressure at all. But that's kind of the only way I could take money right now. I might do a donation link at some point in the future, but I feel like we're a ways away from that. So, yeah. Guillermo says, looks like Jeopardy. It certainly does, doesn't it? I'll take bad DJI signal for... Yep, as Velociraptor Foil says, looks like his camera is adjusting for light changes when he moves. That is correct. Two-Stroke Pirate says, wow, that's bad. Thanks for sharing. Haven't had experience that bad yet. Appreciate your help. 100%. Yeah, that's the first time I've ever had anything like that happen. I've had bad experiences before with the audience mode. I don't think it's ever flyable. But my understanding is it's so bad because you're doing retransmission. So the worse the signal is for the main user, the exponentially worse it would be for the other user because they're getting all these retransmit packets. UAV Tech says, to be fair, Heartbeat is only on ACCST 2018 version of R9. Access versions are fine. Did not know that. So that's wonderful to know. Okay, so question for UAV Tech if he's hanging out. Does access still need averaging 4 for R9? Or is it fast enough link to be averaged faster than that? Vic and Air FPV says, my idea for a 4-inch long range is an analog with 1.3 gigahertz in crossfire, ideally a Maytech FC with a barometer running iNav and of course GPS, that we could have more reliable RTH and actual position hold. Yeah, I think if you are trying to do long range of any kind, 1.3 gigahertz video is the ticket for sure. And also, iNav is going to be your best bet. iNav or like some kind of Pixhawk or something. But if you want to fly like a typical FPV, I think iNav is a great solution. Yeah, for sure. It sounds like a fun build. I've never really long range myself. Something I've thought about. Seems like fun. Guillermo, 4,000 hours. Yeah, man, that's a lot of streaming. Streaming and videos. So we'll get there. So just to be clear, it's not 4,000 hours I have to stream. It's 4,000 hours of time you guys have to watch. So right now our average watch time is 18 minutes on the stream. So that means 55 people over 18 minutes. You multiply that out, and that's how much watch time I've gotten from this stream. Yeah. And then everybody watches it back. That'll be more watch time. So we'll slowly get there. Rick Zapata says you could set up a PayPal and people could donate there like they do with Ciati. I'll think about it. I don't like asking for money, so, but we'll see. I'd rather, just provide content and it'll come as it comes. So, Bleed the Way says, hey Blunty, really enjoy the videos you've been doing with Bardwell. Definitely brings a nice aspect to those new product release videos. I agree, man. I think we're going to keep doing those. I don't know. We haven't talked about next month, but it seems like we're having a good time and we vibe really well. So I could just say that I'm really thankful Bardwell has kind of grabbed me and allowed me to do content with them. So I think we work out as a really good team. Cause FPV says, what's this averaging 4 thing you speak of? Let's see. I will pull it up for you. So it is, I believe, feed forward averaging is what we're talking about here. Hold on a minute. Let's see, 4.2, notes. Okay, so over to the screen. So in the Betaflight 4.2 tuning notes, we have talk about the feed forward interpolate set point. The most important feed forward parameter is in the mode which feed forward operates, which can be set as following, uses interpolate set point. Now I believe average 2 is the default, but I'm not 100% sure. It might be average 4. But basically what it does is it's going to pull or grab the RC signal and average it over these different points. So let's say R9, right, has some jitter. If R9 has jitter, then you'd set it to average 4, and then that jitter hopefully will be reduced because 3 of your steps don't have jitter and 1 does. And so you're averaging the 3 better numbers and the 1 worse number to get closer to the correct numbers. Whereas if you had averaged 1 or like on, right, you would just instead be getting the current wrong number, correct number, wrong number, correct number, correct number. So yeah, something to consider. T-Bird FPV says, how many hours are you at? Not a lot, but we could find out. Last time I looked, I think it was like 300 or something. Sorry, let's get this over here. I'm at 375 public watch hours. So just need 10 times that, and we can start taking donations. Hey, there we go. Wonderful information from UAV Tech. No, for R9M access, you can go down to average 2. R9 access is 6.67 millisecond frame rate pretty much consistently. That's excellent information. So maybe we shouldn't talk as much shit about R9 access. We should be talking shit about R9 ACCST. Yeah. Let's see. Crystal FPV says you guys should keep doing those roundups. Yeah, for sure, man. I hopefully do. So, Browser on Tech says, hey, man, how's it going? Thanks for coming by. Bleed the Way says, hell yeah, dude. You guys both bring some great back and forth to those. To be honest, never sat and watched a full one until you joined in. That's awesome, man. Thank you so much. That's the goal, right? I want it to be like something for people to actually listen to, and I think two people conversing is definitely good for that. Also, like, imagine how much content Bardwell makes alone. How often is he talking to himself on a microphone without even a chat? He's just talking to himself on a microphone. So I have to assume it's nice to have somebody else there. Guillermo says, where you meet JB? I met JB on his Discord. So I found JB very early. Started going on his Discord and spent months and months and months just fixing people's problems like I still do on his Discord. Because as soon as I learned, I'm one of those kind of people who needs to share that information, call it a know-it-all, because he does. Like that's what we are. I'm happy to provide that help for people, just like I am now. And he recognized that. I did a couple videos, and he was like, hey, man, the videos are great. So why don't you come and do videos with me? So that's what I'm doing. Cause FPV says maybe that's why my feed forward felt like doo-doo garbage. It's possible. Depends on, it sounds like what UAV Tech said here. Depends on how it's set up and what your RC link is currently. Guillermo says I was writing bad your name. Yeah, I think most people think my name it's Bluntly, because I speak bluntly. But hey, it is what it is. It's hard to correct that, so. Let's see. Cause FPV says, what's the refresh rate of R9? I guess that's going to be R9 ACCST. Oh, I see. You're asking what's the refresh rate of R9 Access. So I would assume to be 6.67 ms frame rate. I think that means it has to be 150 hertz. Correct me if I'm wrong. Vic and Air, Lou Bega has a critical role in the TBS Mambo project. That's very true. I've heard the same. Somebody needs to make Mambo number 5 with the names of people from TBS. So that would be funny. Browser on Take says, and there's Henry. Browser on Tech says, nice. Is this all full time now? I'm consulting cannabis still for part of my time, but yes, as much as I can. I'm going to be doing full-time stuff. So. Bleed the Way says, dude, I can't imagine Bardwell just used to talking alone by himself. I know, man. Talking to a camera with you guys in chat is still weird. Much less Bardwell talking to himself for, what, 10, 12, 14 hours a day? Or, I'm sorry, a week? Must be crazy. Airborne FPV says, nice job on JB's intro. Learned something today without watching JB. 100%, man. That's super cool that you did that. UAV Tech says the frame rate is 6.67 ms. But then every 200 ms it bumps up to 14 to 22 ms for 3 to 4 frames. So that's got to be the heartbeat on the ACCST. And then back to 6.67. I see. 150 kilohertz for 6.67 ms. Yes. Okay. You already made that video with Lou Bega. All right. I will check it out, Guillermo. I promise. Show some grow pics. Okay. I'll show one. How about that? I'll show one. Let's see. This is me at my consulting job just a couple days ago. Two days. Yesterday. Just yesterday. Yeah. So that's what I do for my quote-unquote day job. about 10 to 15 hours a month at the most at this point. But yeah, pretty cool. Del Squatcha says, "Hey Blunt, you ready to print shirts for you? That'd be pretty cool, man. I'll let you know if I'm gonna do that. But that would be pretty neat. Got some fire in the weeds, heaven. Can we trade day jobs? They just legalized it in New Jersey. Yeah. All I'll say is that everybody thinks that they're gonna work in weed, and it's gonna be the best job in the world because they love weed. And hey, it's never gonna work a day in our life because we're doing something we love. So, what I'm gonna say is, I think that I think that every job becomes a job after a long time, and you have to change it up, make it different, those sorts of things. It's not always a dream, right? But it's a lot of fun, and the ability to do what I do is a lot of fun. Um, I get to go in and tell people how to grow weed and how to make it work better and stuff, and I definitely like it a lot more than working 40 to 60 hours a week, babysitting 25 to 30 people in a 25,000 square foot facility. So yeah, you just got to have the right amount of it, right? Tiago Ramos says, "You're lucky you don't have to wear a hairnet in the flower room." I agree. It is nice. Everything goes through so much processing after this. I can't even see a point in wearing a hairnet. The hair's not going to make it very far. There's like 3 or 4 steps of handling, past this. So. Well, there goes, Guillermo says, "Well, there goes my yes when I asked my visa to visit the States. As soon as I see that, I follow you on Bot Grinder." Yeah, for sure, man. Yeah, Browser and Text says it's still a taxing job. 100%. It's still work, right? You're always working, so. So are you like the Cause FPV says, "Are you like the Gordon Ramsay of cannabis? Do you just go into different farms that are sucking and fix all their crap?" Yes, that is my job. However, lately I've just been going into grows that are already working and continue to help them work correctly. I'm different than a lot of, I think, people who run a cannabis facility, because when I say I run a cannabis facility, I don't just run it. I don't just grow, right? I don't just like manage employees. Okay, I'm doing everything. So I do HVAC, so I do all the air conditioning. I can work on the physical units. I have my EPA certification. I do all the electrical. I can do plumbing. I can do low voltage controls. I do PLC programming. I know Niagara and Talon networks for automation. So that's something I did, like, for instance, in that picture. I was there working on heater units and checking on the automation system for the heater units. I also do like service on the units, those sorts of things, right? So it really just depends, but I kind of do everything. My goal is to do everything. I'm very familiar with the law, so I know compliance to the law, and I know what's wrong. At least in Colorado, when I walk into a grow, I can tell you if it's legal or not right away and why. I know cure process, trimming, growing, cultivation, light technologies and energy usage and all that stuff. So. It's an all-around thing. I think a lot of consultants come in and they go, "Here's a salt recipe," and that's what you get. But with me, you kind of get everything, right? You're going to get, like, here's how to meet your target vapor pressure deficit in your environment with the controls that you have. So things like that. The biggest issue with meeting vapor pressure deficit, by the way, is humidity. So you're going to bud rot if you hit VPD in a lot of rooms. You got to be careful. Let's see. Bleed the way. Great outlook and advice on the job stuff, man. Definitely do stuff that you love to do, but anything you do for a job will always pretty much feel like a job. That is my 100% truth. I think the biggest lie that people are told is that do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. If you're working, you're working. And that's the facts. So you got to find a way not to work, or you got to find a way to enjoy the work. One of the ways I found was varying. I learned HVAC on the job. I do IT. I do all the DVRs. Like, I do all the networking, pull all the wires and stuff, like all those kind of things. So, Cause FPV says, as Oregonian resident, the weed industry is not the highest paid, especially for bud tenders, and now it's hard to put on a resume for a different industry. Yeah, that's a big problem here too, man. The problem is, if people are willing to work for a wage, they're going to pay that wage. Denver has done some work to get it a little higher. I think we're at 12.85 for minimum wage now, and we'll eventually go to 14, like 14.10 or something, and then eventually over 15, I think, in 2 or 3 years. But I think a lot of places need to start adopting that idea because there's a lot of people who want to work in weed and they think it's fun to work in weed and they don't get burnt out for 6 months to a year. And they take all the jobs of the people who need to make actual money to feed their families. So I think if you're trying to make money in weed, you need to move your way up very quickly. You need to look at it as an internship almost and get your way out of there as fast as possible. I trimmed for a month and like a week, and I was hired out of the trimming company. It was a contract trimming company into another company to do packaging. Within a month, I was head of packaging. Within a month, I was head of cure. Like so, it's literally about your initiative, your drive, and your positioning. Make it happen for yourself. Bleed the Way says makes you really have to choose what you want to keep as a hobby versus doing it for a living. 100%. You can't. You cannot assume that you're going to be a bottom level, low tier grower at one company and make any amount of money to live off of. It's just not possible. You are hired labor, moving pots, putting water in a pot. Places are getting recipes, they're finding automation, they're finding good systems, they're finding better yields, they're finding processes that work for them. And unless you're a value add for that, then you're going to be a $13 to $15 an hour paid grower, and that's it. And it's unfortunate, but that's the situation we live in. You have to build value for yourself, and that's how you can progress. That's what I would say. Bill Grimes says, is there a limit of hours worked in the grows? The place near me has people working those hours also. No, man. It's just the standard labor laws. So I think they can work as much as they want. You just have to be okay with it, and they have to pay you overtime, depending on the state you're in, I think. But yeah. Cause FB says, you're a cannabis engineer. I have definitely called myself an armchair cannabis engineer. I think you have to learn what you do on the job like that, and the only way you can advance and push forward is to learn all these skills, right? And then you make yourself irreplaceable. So that was my plan, and that's what I did. Bleed the Way says, haha, Blunty, I'm that guy for IT. I can basically do anything a company needs IT-wise. You're that guy for weed. That's epic. Yeah, man, that's my goal, is, again, be irreplaceable. Learn everything. Don't shy away from anything. I did any job in the building for any amount of time they asked me to do it, but I was so valuable that I couldn't continue to do jobs like that. I was pulled out of Cure to work in data because they needed part of my time for compliance to the law, part of my time for data, part of my time for HVAC. And those are the kind of things that don't happen to the other Cure people because they don't build a skill set. I didn't know anything about HVAC when I started that job. I pushed my way into that role, and so that's something I would encourage anyone to do. Speedy Turtle says that's the stuff I enjoy: electrical, PLC, HVAC, etc. Yeah, you just got to find a place to use that knowledge. And so I didn't know I liked it until I got into it. I didn't realize HVAC was basically like an electrical puzzle, and it is, and it's very cool. So KD2RDH Larry says gardening chat. Yes, sir. I'm happy to have a gardening chat if anybody likes it. We're talking about FPV, but we're also talking about whatever you guys want to talk about. So. Bleed the Way says, okay, you're weed and IT guru. Goddamn, son. Yeah, man, I, jack of all trades, master of none, but, like, we're moving towards mastery, you know? Like, I probably have 10,000 hours in cannabis easy. It's just in varied parts of it, right? Guillermo says you're the Heisenberg of cannabis. It's illegal, but yes. Browser on Tech says, what are the known perks does an employee get for working in the cannabis industry? You get to test and smoke them too. So a lot of places, so in Colorado, you can't smoke anything on the job. You're not allowed to be intoxicated on the job, and you can't possess any marijuana that's not of the company on the job. So that typically means that places are not giving giving handouts and stuff. It depends on where you work, though. A lot of places are not compliant. They're not following the rules as well, and they'll just hand people bud out of a jar. The amount of tracking you have to do for product, imagine a pound of weed that's wet, and then a pound of weed that's dry. Okay, how do you know how dry it's supposed to get? How do you know how dry it is at the end? How do you know as a producer how wet it was at the beginning? How do you know how much water left? How do you measure that water? Okay, there's plenty of fudge room, and we're dealing with hundreds of pounds. So you can slip a pound out even here and there, and people do it all the time. If you're legal, then what typically happens is the employee's going to get a discount at the store that the company owns. So, like for the place that I consult, I actually get lifetime employee discount because I worked there for 8 years and now I consult. So I can go to their store anytime and get an employee discount on that product. I pay $80 an ounce out the door for cannabis. That's very high quality. Cause FPV says, that's why I went from serving making coffee to distributing coffee to fixing the machines that make your coffee. Now I want to do anything else. That's very true. However, do you want to be sitting still running, like, still serving making coffee? So it's alternatives, right? Gamma says, Dude Hawk Cannabis, that's not your YouTube channel sound. You're very much into it. Yeah, sure. There's just not a lot of... I'm kind of tired of it, I guess is the best way to put it. Just because you know a lot about something doesn't mean you're super interested in talking about it all the time. I'm happy to share it with you guys, but if you think about doing it for a living or having it as a main channel, I think I've just got so many years invested that it's maybe not something I'm interested in doing. I might open a second channel at some point that would do that, but this will probably be primarily FPV. Who knows, that could change though. Cause FPV says there are a lot of rules from states that prohibit most sampling sharing perks. You typically get a discount if you work at a dispensary. Not sure about the grow ops, but probably no. Yeah, 100%. Discount is what you get typically. Vic and Air says, that's so inspiring. I'm building a culinary mushroom company, and I'm building my skill set with HVAC, coding, making my own pasteurizers, controllers, etc. Hope to be rare someday with my mushies. 100%. The other thing I would say is, like, if you're a business owner, if you want to start a business like this, if you're trying to, like you said, run a mushroom business, right? The idea to me that you would open a mushroom business and not understand how to fix the air conditioner if it breaks seems crazy, right? You otherwise have to rely on someone to do that job and give you the correct advice. And other than working for just the hourly wage, it doesn't seem like it makes a lot of sense to me, so. Spud FB says, any other hobbies? Gaming. I'm a big gaming guy. I don't talk about it too much. MMOs and stuff. Like DayZ, Raft, Escape from Tarkov, shooters. I'm a big shooter guy. I've been playing shooters since I was like 7. So. $80 an ounce. My God, yeah, it's pretty awesome, man. I'm digging it. I can't complain. There's nothing to complain about. So, Dan Richmond says, I paid $250 for an L of something that turned out to be CBD/cry. I'm so sorry to hear that, Dan. If you're anywhere near Denver, if you come into Denver, I can certainly help you out. But that's not for everybody, okay? That's just for Mr. Dan Richmond. What's your favorite type of flying? I raced a lot. I raced whoops. In simulators and online. Yeah, so bear with me just 1 second, guys. I will be right back. My phone is going off, and that is what I'm using for a camera. Give me just 1 second. Oh, okay, sorry about that. There we go. Just didn't want you guys to be hearing a weird noise in the background for no reason. All right. Phone is muted. Just because says, you paid what I paid back in the 70s. Amen. So happy to hear that. Yeah, man. I wish everybody could pay $80 for an ounce of weed, and I don't think it'll be too long before that's the case. I mean, Oregon, I don't know the quality. Oregon and Washington, I think, got down to like $20 or $30 ounces at some point because of surplus, which is pretty crazy. But I also don't think that was the best. I think before this, I was talking real quickly about racing, though. I do race whoops in the simulator and in real life. I've taken a couple seconds in real life. and a couple thirds. And depending on the event, I'm taking first a couple times as well. So yeah, I really like racing. Mainly whoops. 5 inches are pretty cool, but whoops seem to be a lot easier to race. A lot more people can race them. There's plenty more places to race than that. So yeah, I'm currently in the newbie drone whoop series. Yeah, working on that. Guillermo says, do you fly only quad or do you planes and helis in RC? So currently I have never done anything other than a quad in RC, but I have a wing. I'll be right back, actually. So yeah, I have a wing that I have not maidened yet. This is a Nano Mini Drac, I believe. I think it's 40-inch wingspan. So it's all set up and it's got a nice Star Wars thing on it. I just need to actually maiden it. So I've got it flashed with iNav. And at some point we will get into that. So I'm actually thinking about making a video series on that of like, hey, a quad guy's first experience on a wing, and then talk about how iNav works and those sorts of things. So yeah, that's the plan. All right, what do we got here? Kevin Smith says RuneScape. I am actually currently playing RuneScape, old school RuneScape only. I'm not a fan of 3, probably nostalgia, but hey, what are you gonna do? I'm playing leagues. I just got my last area, and I have my 5th relic, almost my 6th relic unlocked in leagues. I went melee like all the Chads went, as you should. Mauritania, Kandarin, Asgarnia. That's how it goes. Cyclomba says, do you remember Star Siege Tribes? I absolutely remember Tribes. I also played Tribes 2 for some amount of time. Tribes is awesome, man. Browser on Tyke says, I've crashed my 5-inch flying baked. I have only flown my 5-inch baked, I'm pretty sure. So I cannot say. I've definitely crashed my 5-inch while flying baked, that's for sure. Bill Grimes says, what are your thoughts on the T-Motor F7 stack with F55 Pro 2? I do not own any T-Motor equipment, but I will tell you that the two ones that I will recommend without owning or without flying a lot of are Hobbywing and T-Motor. And they both seem like super solid companies. They're what Rotor Riot builds on their units. They're what Bardwell has on some of his stuff. They're what racers recommend the Hobbywing ESCs. I think Hobbywing and T-Motor are the ticket. I would definitely not shy away from the T-Motor F7 stack with the F55 Pro 2. Unless there's some issue I don't know about with it, but as far as I know, it should be good to go. Dana Richmond says, I need a camera that can fly around sunset without making the sky bright and the ground black. Anybody tried the Toothless 2? I have not tried the Toothless 2. I am pretty much DJI only at this point other than the micros, and I am trying to do more analog cameras, so Toothless 2 is on my list of cameras to purchase. Cause FPV says, planes are super fun. I am definitely excited to try wing, that's for sure. Vicanair says, FPV, do you race whoops in angle mode? I've had a hard time getting the hang of it. Yes, and I would say that 95% or more of the best pilots that I know in whoop racing, both in the sim and in real life, fly angle mode. There are plenty of great acro mode pilots. The fastest racer I've ever seen, Rab FPV, angle mode races. So to me, that means that you can angle mode race and get away with it no problem at the fastest level. I just think about, number one I'll say is just fly angle mode a lot when you fly whoops, because that's what will train you. But the other thing is make sure the tune is proper and make sure you're actually like dialed in. If you're dialed in and the whoop's flying properly, then it's just about learning think in angle mode. So I can kind of swap back and forth now. It takes 20 minutes maybe for me to fly them back to back and do really well to get back to my normal times. But typically with the whoop, I'm just thinking about it being a pendulum. So I'm thinking about the fact that when I turn and let go, my whoop is going to self-right. And so when I'm going around a corner, I'm like jamming the stick and I'm going to let it pop back because I let it go. And you will learn over time how to use that to your advantage to get through gates, to get around gaps and things you cannot do in acro because of the way you're popping back automatically. You could do an acro if you like somehow had magic sticks, but again, you're popping back to center, like to flat, and so I think it's kind of a different thing. Let's see. Guillermo, there's nothing wrong. No, your fault. It's not your fault. I'm happy to show my Drac on stream. I should have had it in the room. So, would be a blast to schedule. Keen here, RC said it would blast to schedule some public DRL flights and I'll rip a Gates of Hell map. I'd be down for that, for sure. Guillermo says Empire, 100%, man. Empire all day. Cause FPV says, for some reason, all my friends that build Dracs take like a year to make them after the build. Let me tell you why that is, Cause. That's because I got this at a discount, and I'm like $300 into this thing. They probably just don't want to break it. And with the wing, unfortunately, with the quad, you get to arm it on the ground, and you get to move the sticks a little bit and see if it tilts on the air mode, right? And you get to, with a wing, you just throw the bitch like you're holding or throwing it, and yeah, man, it can be super nerve-wracking. And then you got to do some auto-tune stuff. And there's a whole thing. Like, yeah, again, like I'm not really into it, but we'll find out. So, Cyclimbo says, I have the toothless tuna. Works well for me. Seems to handle the range of light fairly well. Nice. Good information. HB says, should I press fit 3-inch props on a 1.5 millimeter shaft on a baby tooth or use T-mount screws? I personally would press fit those. Unless the props feel loose, press fit should be fine. It's about tolerances, I think, on the prop mold. So I think you probably get difference from batches even. So I would probably say that you should press fit them, and then once you've press fit them and you've had a couple pop offs, then go back. I've never had a pop off on my baby tooth or TP3 from doing press fit on 2 millimeter shafts. So if you do have a pop-off or two, I would say probably not worth your time. Just go ahead and T-mount them. There's not a lot of weight in those screws, and it's probably worth it. You can do Rennie screws, R-E-N-Y. Rennie screws are another good option for people who don't want the weight from those screws. Rick Zapata says, you need to come to Las Vegas when the opportunity permits. We do a lot of local racing here. You have a great time. It's mainly whoops, but other sizes too. Yeah, man, I'm super stoked to do something like that. Sean Pringle says, definitely crashed many times before getting the hang of a wing, even this after sim time. So just learning line of sight. Yeah, see, I know nothing about line of sight, so it makes takeoff and landing easier. Pika Sim is a good free one. Never heard of it. I will check it out. Let's see. Dauntless H says Toothless chooses a Starlight camera. From what I hear, it compares very well to the Baby Rattel. Awesome. Yeah, I'll definitely have to check that one out. Toothless 2 I've heard great things about. Keen RC says, I'm teaching my 7-year-old son to only fly acro on all of our quads. I think that's a great. The only thing I'll say is that I can't fly acro on a whoop. I can, but like trying to do anything useful, like I can't power loop something like targeted on a whoop very well. That power to weight is so different that it's something I'm trying to learn. So that's why I think about whoops differently than I think about big quads. And so a big quad and acro and a whoop and angle to me both make sense. Just because, are you intending to do live streaming on a regular basis? Yes, that is the plan, hopefully. Maybe every Wednesday if it works out. I'll do that. But yeah, we'll see what happens. It seems like there's plenty of people here. I did not expect, honestly, did not expect 65 of you to be here. So I expected the 8 people to be here. So super awesome. So Sean Pringle says, get a cheap wing. Fly without a controller first, low dollars. Yeah, this is why I haven't made the Drac yet, but I've realized that I'm never going to get the cheap wing because I'm just haven't done it yet. So I think I'm just going to have to main the Drac and call it a day. Bill Grimes says launch assist will help with wings, for sure. I think you have to tune it before you use launch assist, though. Is that correct? Maybe that's not correct. Vixen Air FPV says, damn, that's great advice, man. I got a Hummingbird Pro recently, and it flies like butter in acro and angle. Just got to put that stick time in, I guess. Yeah, 100%. Stick time all day. If you get gates in your house, you can see behind me the gates. I have gates all over my house. There's a video on my channel of me flying through all those gates on a track. It's the most helpful thing I've ever done, for sure. So, let's see. Mr. Goodbar FPV says, Blunty, much love for Rip Mode, brother. Much love to Rip Mode as well, man. Rip Mode's a local FPV group here in Denver. And they are hitting all the local spots all the time. Rip Mode, as their name suggests. If you guys want to hang out with anybody in Denver and fly, you can look up Rip Mode Squad on Facebook. And I'm actually going to make him a moderator, Mr. Goodbar. If you wanted to post a link to that group on Facebook, you're welcome to do that. Rick Zapata says, you're right about the wing. I have a fun jet that does 90 to 100 miles per hour, and yes, you can't really test anything till it's in the air. I began this hobby with fixed wing and 3D flying. Yeah, it definitely gets scary. Dauntless H says, FYI, the Toothless 2 comes in Standard and Starlight. That's great information. You want Starlight for mainly dark environments, but it will have less FOV than the Standard version. Standard version also does well in low light. Very interesting. Cause FPV says, yes, that's well aware that's why they're afraid to fly it. Mr. Goodbar says, refer to flight test for cheap wings before you spend the money on a drac. Yep, for sure. Cause FPV says, that's why I keep buying HH planes and doing loops directly after taking off. For sure, man. Bill Grimes says, do you use air mode on your Whoopson side? I do use air mode on my whoops. I have not found an issue with it. I think it's just helped me so far. I don't know that there's a huge difference though. I haven't like back-to-backed them. Maybe that's another good idea for a video. Is back-to-back, does air mode actually help on a whoop, or does it hurt you from the crashing? Yeah, I'll put that on the list. Tiago Rima says, a bit of advertising on your shop, no? Sure, why not? Let's do it. I run a local quad parts website in Denver, Colorado, but we ship all over the United States. So any of you in the United States, I'll put my link in the chat. If you're interested, check out my website. A little low on stock, waiting on a TBS order right now. But I've got some flight controllers and ESCs and stuff. If you'd like to support me, that's another way to do it. So. Mr. Goodbar has put in the chat his group for Rip Mode Squad. So definitely go check that out if you guys are interested. Cause of Review says, yes, I definitely recommend building a flight test arrow. It's a good trainer, for sure, man. Sean Pringle says, second the flight test. That's 3 of those. Rick Zapata says, I have a course set up in my garage with gates and LEDs, and it's great practice and an essential tool. 100%. If you're not practicing going through a gate or gapping somehow, if you're just flying a loop around, you're not learning to race. You're just learning to fly. I definitely think that you should be trying to race around the house through gates or gaps, or, I mean, take cardboard boxes and pop the bottom out, you know, take the top and bottom off and shoot through the cardboard box like a tunnel. You know, I also use, I get water delivered and I use the water delivery containers. I cut them into circles and use those as gates. Anything like that is a solid way to learn. HB says, definitely check the control direction and the correction direction before throwing it. Otherwise, you'll have some real trouble trying to fly it. Yeah, for sure. You better believe, I hope you know that I will watch every bit of information I can to make sure that I'm doing the correct thing, but 100%. KD2RDH Larry says, do you also 3D print? I did 3D print for a short time, and I got so fed up with my printer that I gave up. It is in a closet, and I'm angry at it, and the hot end has been disassembled. I think this is many people's life with 3D printing. Yeah, it's a CR10S standard. Yeah, CR10S, not S5. You know, I liked it, and it made good prints for a while. But about every 2 hours, I ran into an issue, and I had to fix it. And I just got tired of it. And so I disassembled my hot end and tried to fix a leak that I had, and there was no leak, and I was under extruding. And I had about 1 million people tell me about 1 million different things to do. And just put it in a closet for a while. So it will eventually probably come back out of the closet, and I will try to get back to 3D printing, but for now, it is what it is. Nico says, hi, I have a question. My quad, when I'm doing sharp roll, makes twitches. I don't mean bounce back. Quad flies so good, but it makes a twitchy sound. Interesting. If you have video of that, you could email that to itsbluntyfpv@gmail.com, and I will check that out for you. Let's try to think about what that would sound like. So it sounds to me like your quad is correcting. Maybe you're just having micro oscillations. It could be happening if you have a log. That'd probably be something to check on the log. Let's see. A flight test foam wing costs $1 at foam from dollar store. Yeah, 100%. Dan Richmond said, when I fly my whoop through the branches of a tree, I turn off air mode because that way I can bump branches and back off again without it freaking out and sticking to a branch. 3D printing can be so frustrating, I almost gave up too, for sure. The thing I'll say about sticking to a branch is I think if you tune the quad correctly, it's not going to stick to anything, even in air mode. I think the sticking thing happens because of poor tunes and the way things are set up. And basically, the flight controller thinks it needs to ramp into the wall, essentially, but it doesn't. So it should fall off the wall. And I think if you've got it tuned properly, that's the case. I think like D-Min, some other general changes to PIDs are probably good for that. Again, that's probably a UAV Tech video, looking at his Whoop presets and seeing, because I believe he's probably not having that issue, but I'm not 100% sure. I can just say that on the tunes that I've done on Whoops, I've not had that issue too much with sticking to a wall or sticking to a gate. It's typically not a big concern of mine, even in air mode. Cause FPV says you could even throw flight control of the flight test arrow and test your skills with iFlight before doing the DRAC. I've watched a complicated nano DRAC build go straight in the ground. Yeah, 100%, man. That's why the guy who sold the DRAC build sold it to me. I didn't actually build it. I got it from a guy. He put it in the ground one time and gave up. So, Mr. Goodbar says, I can definitely rip a brushless 65mm Whoop freestyle like it's a 5-inch. I just carry more throttle through the maneuvers. As far as brushed, I'd say the Alien Whoop Zero board is best for freestyle. That's super cool, man. I have not done a lot of freestyle whooping. But yeah, I'm typically like a 3-inch, like TV3 is where I'm going for the freestyle. But it's pretty awesome. Keen RC says, I have a RAG E-frame I want to build into an all-weather flyer. Recently flew a Swell Pro Spry in Acro in the pouring rain. I stayed dry in the garage. Most fun I've had in a while. Any tips? Conformal. I think conformal is probably about as good as you're going to get without wrapping it in something and epoxying it shut. You know, the traditional method, there's like, I think there's an old Rotor Riot video about it, but there's a video on a couple different channels about, and then there's a new kit, the, what's it called? There's a new underwater kit as well, but basically it's just vinyl bags that you're epoxying shut from what I understand, and then you're just not letting anything get in there. So I think those are your two options. If you conformal enough coats, you're probably fine, but I think there's always a chance for that conformal to nick or get messed up or heat or other issues to be caused, and then you're not going to get the best performance out of conformal. You don't need a lot of conductivity to cross for those voltages. That's what I would say. Yeah, HB says, Nico, I have that too if my quad has high PIDs. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm leaning, is high PIDs there. Danish Stallion says, howdy, Bunty. Thanks for stopping by, Danish Stallion. Dan Richmond says, I've never tuned a Whoop. Only just started learning. That's since I got my 5-inch. So yeah, for tuning, I just say it again, theuavtech.com. He has presets, he has tuning profiles, he'll tell you how to understand black box, he has presets for black box. He knows way more than I do about tuning. He's probably the place to go. So, let's see. Yeah, Danish Stallion sitting here troubleshooting a Crossfire Nano receiver to FC lag, trying different firmwares now. Already swapped FC and Nano. Already slightly losing my mind. I assume that means you refresh the firmware on the module as well. If you haven't, I would do that and maybe change module firmware. The other thing I would do is emergency update to the Nano, so take it back to the golden firmware. You can find a guide if you just Google Crossfire emergency update. Easy peasy. As far as why you're getting FC lag on the receiver input, if you're using Crossfire signal like TXRX, I don't have a good answer for you. It's possible that the CPU is being overused, so maybe you try turning down the PID loop rate or the D-shot value from like 600 to 300, 300 to 150, and just seeing if that makes any difference at all on the CPU cycles. Yeah, something to check out. Let's see. Robert Rumpel says, hello, Blunty. Thanks for stopping by, Robert. HB says, we have a video on the baby tooth because that's something I'd really like to see. That's something I would consider. Yeah, I'll put that on the list of videos to make. Maybe we'll do like a TP3 and a baby tooth conversation. It's just hard for me to know what people want to hear about, right? A lot of times I feel like I'm rambling and I don't have good information. Like if I don't have like, here's a scoop or here's a direct research that it took me hours to do, then sometimes it feels like I'm not giving you guys the best information, but also just sharing a build sometimes. It's pretty cool. Mr. Goodbar says, we'll have you over to the Rip Mode Clubhouse for a whoop and crawl session sometimes. That's good times for sure. Yeah, man, that's cool. Not a big hangout with people guy, but I'm definitely down to do it every now and then. So, yeah, hit me up. Nico says, can you give me your mail here? I'm assuming you mean email. It's bluntyfpv@gmail.com. If you mean a postal address, please email me at itsbluntyfpv@gmail.com and let me know who you are, and I will try to do that for you. Timo says, best route for kids who are learning from a sim. Okay, so how old is the question? If you're very young and the sim is not working out very well or the acro doesn't seem like it's working out, there is a quad from Emacs, the Easy Pilot. And the Easy Pilot actually has a stabilization mode. And it's the only reason I recommend it to someone who is a very, very young pilot. Because it will stabilize itself with a certain mode on the quad, which most other quads can't do at this level. Let's switch over to that just so you can see. So this is the Emacs Easy Pilot. It's only $120. It comes with the goggles and receiver and transmitter. Now these goggles and the transmitter are terrible. So if you want to go anywhere with the hobby or you want to do anything later, it's probably not the best. Maybe you could resell it to another kid. But that being said, if they're any farther than that, I think any kind of whoop like that is good. The B-Brain brushless, the Hummingbird F4 Pro, Mobula 6, any of those style whoops are probably positive. I don't think any of them are going to break more than another. And they all have replaceable parts. So, Wild Surf's here. Yo, how's it going, Wild Surf? Cool, Nico. I will check out those logs for sure. Family Grier. Is that right? Family Geier, I see. Family Guyver. Says, I'm having trouble moving from box goggles to my new SkyZone O2Xs. I see double. I'm at 57 IPD in measurement. Am I stuck with box goggles? So here's something I'll tell you is that I only have box goggles. The DJI goggles have like lenses, but they're not, they still go like they're still like a box goggle. I think 57 is pretty low. Let me pull up a chart I have. Just 1 second here. Of products. If I can find it. Here we go. Okay. So this is just a couple things here, but this is going to go over some of the things now. If you see minimum listed IPD here, is it going to be, yeah, 50. So SkyZone claims 57.5. And you're saying you're a 57. So on this chart, the only thing that lands there is an HDO2 because of their increased FOV range. So possibly something to consider. The O4X is still only 58. So it's possible with 54 you'd be able to see. If you can use somebody else's HDO2s, it may be beneficial for you to give those a shot. However, those are $500 goggles. So kind of hard to recommend those versus, you know, I guess an 030 is 400. So if you're in the ballpark. O2X, I see. Okay. Not sure what an O2X was. Let's see. Keen RC says, have you flown Tiny Hawk 2 Freestyle? Really great flyer and amazing first quad that gives you a small 5-inch feel. My 7-year-old learned on it. Really crash forgiving too. We have a lot of whoops. I have not flown the Freestyle. However, I've known a lot of people who've flown the Freestyle, and it seems like a super positive quad for younger people. I just think there's also a lot of other things in that bracket that are also pretty awesome. Yeah, the Freestyle is good on cost, for sure. Freestyle is definitely good on cost. I'm trying to think of what I would say there. Yeah, if you're looking for a small 5-inch and you don't want to build anything, I think a Freestyle is definitely a good spot. The other thing I would say, though, is, I think you have to start looking at these 1S or 2S toothpick builds and considering those as well. You can't crash them as much, but they're also going to fly quite a bit differently. I guess you're not really getting a 5-inch profile, so if you're trying to train to a 5-inch, maybe not the best idea. Yeah, as far as bind and fly quads, I think Tiny Hawk 2 Freestyle is definitely a good option. HGO2 sub, Keith Throne says HGO2 sub IPD adjustments, yep. Dan Richmond says cool chart. Yeah, I just threw it together. I'd like to put a bunch more stuff on here, but this is kind of a comparison for me, just so I could see where the new O4Xs landed when we talked about them on the news, so. McGavver says very expensive. Yes, those HGO2s are. Thanks. Might get Fat Shark Scouts. Yeah, I totally understand that. It's a lot of money to invest, for sure. Chance Kelly says, I attempted the maiden flight for my first quadcopter yesterday, and one of the props instantly flew away. Now I'm waiting on replacement locking nuts. Nice. Man, make sure you're getting those tight, man. You should not be able to turn those anymore when you lock those on there. It's hard to get those too tight. I mean, you can, but it's pretty hard. Dan Richmond says, I only have box goggles. I turned my friend's Fat Shark. It was always 2 images for me, and then realized he still had his diopters installed. Even without them, I wasn't impressed. They were old Fat Sharks. Yeah, 100%. I did the same thing. I looked at a pair of HGO2s and was thoroughly unimpressed after using DJI goggles and a pair of FXT Vipers for box goggles, just because the field of view in a box goggle is night and day. DJI, if you haven't seen it, is looking like it's like you're in a theater and you're in front of a big screen. For me, HGO2s and HGO1s especially were very much like looking into a tunnel. All right, guys. How long have we been going here? Oh my gosh, 2 hours and 20 minutes we've been going. I guess 2 hours and 10 minutes because I streamed myself for the first 10 minutes. But I think that might do it for me today. I appreciate everyone stopping by. 64 concurrent viewers, about 60 more than I expected. So pretty awesome, man. One last question here. Keen RC, have you tried any FPV crawlers before? I have not, and I'm super interested to try that out, man. I haven't really done any RC car or any RC ground vehicles of any sort. So, all right, guys, with that, that's going to do it. Thank you so much for stopping by. If you want to support me, maybe throw me a subscription, give a like on this video. It would be pretty cool if you could do that. That definitely helps YouTube recommend these videos later. And I'm also going to put my Patreon in one more time in the chat. If you want to subscribe to my Patreon, it does help me out. It just shows some support, kind of legitimizes what I do. And as little as $3 a month, you can help support me there. So again, thanks you guys for everybody for showing up, and have a wonderful day.